So we are going to go ahead and get started. We have two wonderful representatives here to speak with us this morning during this session. And the first is Representative Dawn Kiefer. She represents the 92nd Legislative District, which includes part of York County, and she's been doing that since 2016. She's a self-described fiscal conservative who brings 20 years of professional and government experience with her to this role. She's owned and operated a consulting firm for 10 years that focused on grassroots strategy, membership development, and fundraising. Her passion for fiscal accountability and transparency are attributes that led to colleagues on the Pennsylvania Freedom Caucus choosing her as chairwoman, which I think is really, if you're not familiar with the Pennsylvania Freedom Caucus, that is definitely something, especially our older students here today, something to look up and to learn a little bit more about. She's served her community in many different capacities, from being a soccer coach to advisor for Chi Omega chapter at Gettysburg College. She and her husband also have 3 children and reside in Dillsburg, and we are so thankful to have her with us today. Like the other legislators joining us, Representative Kiefer has been a friendly face and supporter of medical freedom and parental rights, so we're really thankful to have her.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm Representative Kiefer. When I first started, I had the top part of York County, and then I had a small piece of Cumberland County. If you guys know where Williams Grove Speedway is, or the Allenberry, I had that area of Cumberland County. So how many people, did you guys do the tour already today? How many of you have been here before? All right, well, this is the most amazing state capital in the country, in my opinion. And I am a nerd. When it comes to this, I go, if I'm in Maryland, I go to their state capital. Wherever I'm at, just to visit, to see what their state capital looks like. And we take this for granted, a lot of us, because we're so close. It's in my backyard. Literally, my district starts about 4 miles from here. So people really take it for granted, but it is an amazing building. So everywhere you go, when you're on your tour, look up. When you're in the main Capitol building, look up at all the paintings and the mural and the gold and just all the detail in this building is irreplaceable. Absolutely irreplaceable. So do you guys know what I do? Boys and girls, do you have any idea what I do here at the Capitol? No? So I'm a state representative. Do you know what that is? Yeah.
You represent your constituents and you vote on legislation.
So he said, I represent my constituents and I vote on legislation. That's correct. In the state. So there's federal, and then I'm in the state level. So there are 203 state representatives, and we each represent about 65,000 people. And then there's Senate. We have 50 state senators that's divided up among the state. So I write legislation. We are 3 branches of government. So for any of my, what would be 4th graders and up, 3 branches of government. What branch am I in? Yeah? Great job, right? Legislative. So there's the legislative, the executive, right, and the judicial branch. So in the legislative, we write the laws. And that's one of the things I've really been a stickler about, is that we write the laws and we do our job. Because too often we write these really big, broad laws, and then we punt to the executive and say, there you go. You do all those rules. You make all the rules for the law I just passed. And people will come to us then and be very frustrated when they're trying to get a permit to do something in the backyard. And then they'll say DEP, who is a Department of Environmental Protection, who does not get elected. They're appointed. They're making all these rules based on one law we passed because, in my opinion, we didn't do our jobs as legislators and write out all the details. We just punt it to the executive and we let these unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats make decisions. And the reason that's important for you as voters is that if you don't like something that happens, the DEP does, you can't go back and do anything about it because they're appointed, they're not elected. But if we did our job like we're supposed to, you can come back and say, you know what, Representative Kiefer, I didn't like what you did, and I'm going to vote for somebody else. And that's what is so great about this country, right? That we can make our decisions, we can make our voices heard in the ballot box. We represented. So if you want to, you have a lot of rules you have to navigate with homeschooling, right? All kinds of crazy things your parents ever and never thought they might have to do to homeschool. It's all those kinds of things that you have to pay attention to your elected official, and you have to let them know, hey, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So one of my bills, the first bills that I ever did was a purple paint bill. Has anybody seen that purple paint when you're driving around? It's out there. You see it might be on a tree or on a post, a fence post. So it's purple paint. I had a constituent come to me, and this is where your voices can be heard. I had a constituent come to me and say, listen, 12 other states in this country have purple paint law. And I said, well, I don't know what that is. He said, well, it lets you just mark your property with this designated purple paint so you don't have to post all those no trespassing signs. So I did some research, talked to some colleagues, figure out how we got it into law, and that's how the purple paint bill came into Pennsylvania, was by a constituent's idea. So staying engaged and talking to your legislator. I know there's one or two legislators up here who have said, I've got something passed that a kid came in to me, talked to me about, and they want to change it. And I thought, I never knew about that. So we don't know what we don't know if you don't come and talk to us. So I'm glad that you're all here. And then I hope you do reach out to, if I'm not your representative, send your representative a letter of anything that you might be concerned about or interested in or want to know more information from them. That's their job. We all work for you. Somebody asked me, I talked to some fourth graders a little while back, and they said, so do you have a boss? And I said, yes, I have 67,000 bosses. So, and if they don't like the job I do, right, every 2 years they can choose somebody else to be the boss. So somebody else to work for them. So I absolutely have a boss. So that's kind of how the process works. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay, well, Mrs. Streckler knows how to get a hold of me if anybody has any questions or ideas or anything that they want to share with me later. So thank you guys all for coming and enjoy your tour today.
Thank you so much, Representative Kiefer. So we also have Representative Barb Klein with us this morning, and she represents the 199th Legislative District, which includes part of Cumberland County. She spent most of her adult life working and serving in the Carlisle community, and prior to being elected to office in 2018, she worked as the Director of Operations and then Director of Business Development at John W. Glyman Jr. Incorporated Excavating. She's also an entrepreneur herself, co-owning and operating Haven Farms, the family farm that she and her husband continue to work growing hay and raising Hereford beef. She and her husband have 3 grown children as well. Preserving our freedoms and education are 2 of Representative Glyn's passions, and we are so very thankful for her unwavering support of medical freedom and parental rights. So I'm excited to be able to hear from her this morning and have her with us today.
Thanks. I want to encourage anybody who cannot hear to come on up closer to the podium, because I know it's hard in this building that you can't hear. So like she said, I live on a farm, okay? And I don't know if any of you like animals. How many of you like animals? Yeah, everybody likes animals. And one of the first things I did when I became elected was to help a farmer educate you, okay? So my bill was called the Agritourism Bill, but it allowed school groups like yours to be able to come onto a farm and learn about the animals and the farm process without the worry of the farmer being sued if somebody got stung by a bee or tripped over a pumpkin or something like that. So it limited the liability for farmers so they would feel more comfortable opening up their homes and their farms to school groups. I'm also on the education committee, so I'm very interested in what you're learning in school and how the curriculum at the Department of Education affects you, okay, as school groups and as homeschoolers. I also had the honor of speaking at graduation for homeschoolers, the Homeschoolers Association. And one of the things that I talked to the graduation kids about is how great your country is. You all live in the greatest country on the planet. And one of the reasons I want you to know that and understand that is because other countries, not all countries, educate all of their students. Did you know that? Did you know that in China, that the government decides whether you're going to go to work or whether you're going to go to college? We don't do that in the United States. In the United States, we educate everyone, and everyone has the opportunity to pursue their dream of what they want to become. And that has a lot to do with the freedom that we have in this country, and we need to make sure that we protect it. Your parents being here today are helping to protect your freedom in the United States. I want all the kids to understand that. You need to give your parents a little bit of credit for bringing you all the way here today to learn about government. And I support that. Okay, as a legislator, I support your parents. And also, Pennsylvania and our nation is a nation that is rooted in parental rights. The Supreme Court of our country, I'm sure some of you have heard about the Supreme Court, have stated that parental rights are there to protect the care, custody, and control of you, not the government. I mean, the government helps sometimes with programs for you, with the curriculum for you, but it's your parents that have the care and the custody of you. All right, do you understand that? I want to make sure that you understand that. We talk about in the Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, we want our government to have our backs when we talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but the government isn't there when you were born, when your mother bore you, right? They weren't in the delivery room. The government's not there, you know, when you're hurt, your parents are helping you and trying to get you medical care. It's your parents that are doing that, and they need to have the control of that throughout your lifetime, not the government. So we're here today to talk a little bit about, you know, government, answer any questions that you might have, but we're also here to support your parents and the rights that they have under our Constitution and within this state. I just want to talk about one thing with the kids and the parents, and that is what we're starting to see as a pattern regarding mental health and some of the surveys that you might be taking, and I'm encouraging you to opt out of any of those, because some of the curriculum is teaching anxiety. It's teaching children to be concerned at a really young age about things they have no control over. And so when you are making a child, especially in elementary school, anxious, and then a survey comes in and says, "Are you anxious?" Of course they're going to answer yes after being taught something that makes them anxious. And then that result then goes into a database, okay, which increases the outcomes for the government to say we need more mental health, support in schools. So I just want you to understand, what's happening out there right now, and make sure that you're, educated and aware. We don't need to have, a survey of your children. You know where your children are. Parents are the best gauge of where your child is mentally, physically, and actually from an educational standpoint. So with that, I'm gonna end. Does anybody have any questions of me? All right, thank you.
I think it's important that you mention the surveys and some of the different things that are happening in public schools, because for two reasons. One, some of you may choose at some point to go to a public school part-time. since that is now opened up in Pennsylvania officially this year for homeschoolers as an option to take some classes or be involved. And we would want to be aware of what might be coming for your students, what they might be offered to take, whether a survey, etc. The other reason is even if you choose not to deal with your public school at all and your children are always home with you, I'm sure you know other families who are sending their children to public school, and having advocacy starts with having conversations in our communities with our family members and our friends and people that are around us in order to share and say, hey, these are the things that are happening. Here's maybe the reason why and what it could be causing, and it's important for us to be aware of that and advocating. So thank you for mentioning those things, and thank you both for being here again this morning. We really appreciate it. Let's give them another round of applause.
So the question she asked was, if a child shares this information or completes a survey, will that information be shared with other agencies in the state? And that is one of the things we're getting at. While there is FERPA, which is a federal regulation that supposedly protects the information of children, they promise they're not sharing that information. They're redacting all of the identifying information before they're releases. But most of these are full-blown data collection pieces of information, as well as, so even if they aren't sharing it per se, it's now your child's record. So as you graduate, I can tell you, my daughter who went through, she's going to enlist in the National Guard, and they wanted to see all of her school records, so if she had ever had services from 9th grade on, from an IEP to any other types of services, that they would be privy to that. And the response I got back was, well, you don't have to share that with them. Well, I didn't. She doesn't have to share that with them. However, she wouldn't be able to get in if she didn't share it. And if you did not provide that information upon request, that's lying through omission. So yeah, that's very concerning that they're collecting this information. And I do have apprehensions that it's not being protected. As they're providing these services, does it affect your taxes? Absolutely, it affects the taxes, and that's one of the big things I keep saying. So the scores have gotten a little bit better in Pennsylvania, but in 22, the reports that we have, that less than half of Pennsylvania students could read on grade level. Less than half. So they couldn't teach our kids to read or write on grade level, but they want to provide health care. So my, mantra that I have continued to say is stay in your lane, right? You say that you don't have enough money to do the job that you're constitutionally obligated to do, which is to educate, right? So why are you veering off into all these other bailiwicks that are not what you're constitutionally obligated to do? And schools cannot be all things to all people, right? They are constitutionally obligated to educate. They're failing to do that, so that's when they need to get back on track.
Good questions, and thank you for that clarity. One other point, as you're talking to friends that have students in the public school system, you can choose to opt out of surveys too. So that's something that a lot of parents don't realize, and that's not usually always communicated clearly or in a timely fashion from the school district. I know from experience. So thank you both of you for being here. So we also have Parental Rights Foundation and parentalrights.org with us today in the atrium lobby. And so if you haven't had a chance to stop by their table, they actually were the ones that printed the signs and brought those along with us that we held in the picture. So we have Michael Ramey, am I pronouncing that right? Yeah. And Vicki Suarez with us. And Michael is the president of the Parental Rights Foundation. He went into that role in June of 2023. Previously, he served as the executive director, and he has extensive experience both in ministry, and also with parental rights and advocating on behalf of that. So we're so thankful to have him here this morning, and he's going to share a little bit with you guys as well.
Thank you. So I want to take just a couple of minutes and tell you about make you aware of two websites. One you can probably already guess, parentalrights.org. That's one of ours. At this point, we operate everything under the name of the Parental Rights Foundation. But we formed the parentalrights.org in 2007 to try to secure a parental rights amendment to the U.S. Constitution. To take what the Supreme Court has said, as the legislators mentioned, that parents have a fundamental right to direct the upbringing, education, and care of their children, and take that from Supreme Court precedent and put it into the text of the U.S. Constitution, so that 20 years down the road, if we get a liberal Supreme Court, they don't change that and decide that no longer means what we think it means. So to secure parental rights, that turned out to be quite a heavy lift. So here we are 17 years later, and we're still not close to having passed the Parental Rights Amendment. So we started looking pretty early on at what can we do to help parental rights until we secure an amendment. We believe that an amendment to the U.S. Constitution is the ultimate solution to secure your parents' rights to be the person, not the government, but your parents, and know what's best for you and make those decisions for you. And so we founded the Parental Rights Foundation in 2014 and started a new website as well, parentalrightsfoundation.org. And so today, if you go to parentalrights.org, you'll find information about that constitutional amendment. But if you go to parentalrightsfoundation.org, you'll find information about a number of other, as it were, smaller parental rights issues, where we're trying to take one item at a time, one subject matter at a time, and try to address those things state by state. And again, ultimately, securing parental rights is fundamental in the U.S. Constitution will help protect families in all 50 states, including the states that really don't think they want that, like California and New York. The parents there want their rights. The state's not so interested. So, but Parental Rights Foundation is an education site and a policy site where we present model ideas, including some that some of your lawmakers here in Pennsylvania have already taken up. One of our ideas there is a fundamental parental rights bill. It basically says the same thing as that constitutional amendment would say. It says that parental rights are fundamental, and it says that the courts have to hold the highest level of scrutiny if a state law would violate those parental rights. That law has to survive a very high level of judicial scrutiny, or else that law is no good because it violates parental rights. So parental rights would be supreme. Mastriano has introduced that a couple of years ago, a fundamental parental rights bill that he's still working on today. I'll let Mickey tell you more about that and the things going on here in Pennsylvania. We also have a confidential reporting bill, which does away with the ability to call in an anonymous report to a child abuse hotline. Because what we're discovering, and you guys probably don't need to worry about this, don't have a lot of experience with this, but what happens a lot of times is if there's an ugly divorce, mom might call in an anonymous report and say dad's abusing the kids because that'll help her get custody. Or dad might call in an anonymous abuse and say that mom neglected the kids because it will help him get custody. Nothing actually happened. State resources are wasted in investigating it, and it's just so that one parent can get an advantage over the other when they go to divorce court trying to get the kids. So our bill would say it can be confidential, but it can't be anonymous. The state needs to know who called in that report. And that way they can track that down if it's not in good faith. They don't waste resources, they can stop the ones that are not in good faith and stop abusing the system, which also protects those innocent families from becoming victims of those investigations that are always intrusive and traumatic. There are other bills on our website as well. That's the parentalrightsfoundation.org website. A reasonable independence bill that keeps parents from getting in trouble for letting their kids do independent things. I mean, you guys homeschool. You know, people look at you funny if your kids are out at the wrong hour of the day. Maybe not as much now as it was 20 years ago, but But what if you want to send your kid to the corner store and it's, it's a quarter mile away and you know your kid's responsible enough and so forth, but you don't know who lives between you and the corner store that's going to look out the window, see a 10 or 12-year-old kid and call the police, right? Well, reasonable independence bills cover that and say this is not neglect. So a number of bills like that can help at the state level. Some of you students might want to go and research what are parental rights, what are some examples of parental rights, and parents, you'll want to sign up. Let me encourage you to go to parentalrightsfoundation.org. If you go to parentalrights.org, that's fine too. It'll end up on the same list. And sign up to receive our newsletters and our email alerts. If Vicki needs to get word to you about stuff going on in Pennsylvania, or if we need to get word to you about something in Congress, like the Parental Rights Amendment right now is HJ Res 38, it's in Congress, and I can tell you that not a single member of the U.S. House from Pennsylvania is a co-sponsor yet. So whoever your congressman is, you could call them and encourage them to co-sponsor. So let me encourage you just to sign up at parentalrights.org or parentalrightsfoundation.org, and we'll keep you in the loop, keep you posted. I think Vicki wanted just a moment or two to speak about things in Pennsylvania. Is that okay?
Sure. Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing those excellent resources. And then we have Vicki Suarez is with us this morning, and Vicki is a member of the board for Parental Rights Foundation. She and her husband, they both also homeschool their children. And she is also the legislative state for Pennsylvania. So she updates those of us that live in Pennsylvania with information about what's going on legislatively regarding parental rights. So here's Vicki. Thank you.
Well, it's been a confusing week, chaotic, so here I am, deciding what I'm going to say. Michael mentioned that parental rights are not protected, right? The courts have established that parental rights are protected. But judges can rule on whim. They can interpret what a case says according to their own worldview, right? So we may say, the courts may say that parents have the right to raise their children, but those are in the courts, not in law. So what are we doing? Here in Pennsylvania, and as Michael mentioned, with the Parental Rights Amendment, House Joint Resolution 38, we are trying to establish in law the fundamental right. Fundamental rights, the Bill of Rights are fundamental rights. Those are God-given rights in law. That's what we're trying to protect. God-given rights. So there's the battle, guys. If you don't know who your state reps are, find out. Your kids, you should know. Everybody 13 and older is old enough to make a comment on their website. 13 and older, we count. So you can get involved in this and be active, okay? Two of the things we're doing in Pennsylvania are Senate Bill 444, sponsored by Senator Mastriano, and House Bill 932, sponsored by Marlon Brown. Both of those bills are the same language, and I'm going to read you the most important part of it. Once I find it. Ready? The liberty of a parent to direct the upbringing, education, care, and welfare of the parent's child is a fundamental right. We're not saying government will allow us to raise our kids. We're saying, get out, stay out, this is our job. Parents do this, not the government. Government thinks that it knows better. There are people who actually believe in government that they know better. Remember the discussion about homeschooling when COVID hit? Well, all these moms, they don't know anything. They don't know what to do. Yeah, we learned, I learned right along with my kids. 28 years I've been homeschooling. We have 3 girls adopted from China. I have seen what happens when the government denies parental rights. And that's why I do this. I don't want it here. We're fighting. This is a battle. We are not allowed by God to step back and be passive. This is the time to fight. You want to raise your kids the way you believe is right? This is what we have to do. We have to pass these two bills. The parents' bill, parental rights bill, Senate Bill 444, House Bill 932. You guys need to know. Get your representatives and senators on board with this. Pester them. Make them know what you believe is right. Convince them that this needs to be done. I was on a city council committee on child separation in Philadelphia with David O. Does anybody remember that he just ran for mayor in Philadelphia and lost? David O is a city councilman. He's a Christian, he's Korean, and he's a lawyer. And he's a city councilman in Philadelphia. And he teaches his kids karate in the home. One day, his son hurt his collarbone, and he took his son to Children's Hospital. And the physician there reported him for abuse because you're not supposed to get, your children are supposed to be hurt at home. So they sent out an investigator, CPS investigator, to his home to investigate. Every single report of child abuse, every single report is required to be investigated. So the investigator went to his home. When he found out that David O was a councilman, he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll just let it drop." Well, David O said, and he looked into it. And he found out that this is happening a lot in Philadelphia, especially in the minority communities. In the minority communities, parents have very little money for defense. And then there's the problem of the anonymous reporting rule, remember? Anonymous reporting, that's mandatory reporting. If you see something that you think might be abuse, you are required to report it to CPS. So these moms who are maybe perhaps living single, trying to raise their kids, trying to do their job, they are being reported for neglect. There was a mom at a rally in Philadelphia who a neighbor saw her there without her child and reported her to CPS because she assumed that the child was being neglected. Well, the child was cared for, but because this person didn't see the mom with the child, she assumed the child was being neglected. And CPS is required to investigate every single report. And guess what? CPS is funded for every child removal. What's the incentive? The incentive is to remove. There's pressure there to remove the child. They ask questions later. We're going to pass this bill, Parental Rights Protection Act, in Pennsylvania so that government has to prove abuse before the child is removed. That's what the bill will do. They want to say, you may not take our children. Prove abuse first. That's the work we're doing. It's up to you guys. Get with your state reps and your senators and get them on board. Thank you.
All right, so who is excited to have some time to explore the Capitol a little bit more and do a couple of little activities and not just maybe be sitting here listening to people speak? Is anyone excited to do that? Okay. So a couple of things. Over here, well, first, I didn't mention this earlier, like housekeeping. There are bathrooms, and some of you probably already found them, but they're could be a little bit tricky to find. So there's a hallway that kind of goes off in that direction, and then it's there's the signs for the Welcome Center, and then the hallway, you're going that way, and then it like splits like this, like a V, and the bathrooms are on the left side. So you go down the left side of the V there, and the bathrooms will be then on your left, just in case you need to find those. We have time now until 12:30, and then we have built in a half an hour for lunch from 12:30 to 1. But really, from now until 1 o'clock is yours to decide how you want to break that up and utilize it. We have for you postcards up here on the front table, as well as some colored pencils and crayons, and you can color those in. And then on the back, it says, please preserve our family's right to medical freedom. And then the students, you can write your name in and your age. Now, we highly recommend that you take the time to then take these and deliver them to your representative or senator's offices here at the Capitol. If you can't, and you would like to give it to one of us, and we can make sure that happens, we can do that as well. But that's our little activity for you today. Vicki had mentioned to me that if you want, you could take one of their parental rights posters that we had for our pictures, and you could even walk into their office with one of those as a starter for your conversation starter as you walk in as well. They're always very excited to see families, and especially constituents, come into their offices because their constituents are the ones that are electing them, so they do want to hear from them. A lot of times we'll walk into legislators' offices here who may not be our legislators, and they'll take our information and they'll listen to us, but in meetings with them, they particularly want to hear from all of you. So if you need to find your legislator's office, if you're not sure who they are, first of all, you can scan the QR code on the schedule that you received, and you can look up that information. And then it will also have their Capitol office listed there. We're happy to help point you in the right direction. And then also the information center, if you haven't grabbed a map for today, you can grab one there. They would also be able to point you in the right direction as well. Take the time also to enjoy the Capitol building, work on that scavenger hunt. Like